Good morning, I'm Brother Jason, and this is the Baptist Catechism. Question 67 asks, what is forbidden in the fourth commandment? What are we not supposed to do on the Sabbath day? According to the fourth commandment, the fourth commandment forbids dishonoring the Lord's day by actions or thoughts that divert the soul from spiritual refreshment, or deprive the body of renewed energy, or distract the mind from its special Sabbath focus on the Lord. Again, the Sabbath was made as a day of rest, a day for us to honor the Lord and to just spend time with God and be refreshed in Him. It's the intent of this, that we would spend time with the Lord. So let's look at Ezekiel chapter 22. Ezekiel says this, in verse 22, 26, chapter 22, 26. Her priests have done violence to my law and have profaned my holy things. They have made no distinction between the holy and the profane. They have not taught the difference between the unclean and the clean, and they hide their eyes from my Sabbaths, and I am profaned among them. So, about the time of Ezekiel, when he's in exile, one of the reasons why the children of Israel went into exile was because they did not obey the Lord by honoring the Sabbath days, and they looked at them as if they were just any other day, and they did not care the way that God wanted them to care about Him. So much so that in the next chapter, Ezekiel 23, verse 38, he says, again, they have done this to me. They have defiled my sanctuary on the same day and have profaned my Sabbaths. There were things that were going on in the temple and in the sanctuary and in the hearts of the people that should not be going on there. And so the Lord sent them into exile. Jeremiah 17 says basically the same thing. He's looking at what's going on in his day, and he says this, thus says the Lord, take heed to yourself, and do not carry any load on the Sabbath day, or bring anything through the gates of Jerusalem. See, one of the things that was going on in Jeremiah's day is the city gates were opening, and people were coming in and spending it as a normal day of commerce. God just wanted them to stop. Just stop selling and buying all these things on the Sabbath day. Should be a day to just stop and rest, not a day to try to make more money. Money has its place, but it's not everything. We can't worship it over God. And so God said, look, take heed to yourself. Don't carry your load on the Sabbath day. Don't bring anything through the gates of Jerusalem. Don't do that. Don't set up shop on a Sabbath day to sell. This is a day to stop and rest. Nehemiah had the same issue. Nehemiah 13, when he rebuilt the city of Jerusalem, he says in chapter 13, verse 15, in those days I saw in Judah some who were treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sacks of grain and loading them on donkeys, as well as wine, grapes, figs, and all kinds of loads, and they were brought them into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. So I admonished them on the day they sold food. And people were, again, doing the same thing, selling fish, selling their wares, working. God just wants you to stop. He just wants you to stop on one day a week and rest. Take that time and focus in on the Lord. In the New Testament, Acts chapter 20, verse 7 says this, on the first day of the week when we were gathered together to break bread, Paul began talking to them, intending to leave the next day, and prolonged his message until midnight. They were focused in on spiritual refreshment. They were gathering together to break bread, to remember the Lord's death and resurrection. They were engaging in spiritual exercises. Mark chapter 2, verse 23, it happened that as Jesus was passing through the grain fields on the Sabbath, he and his disciples began to make their way along while picking the heads of grain. So I can't think of a better way to spend your Sabbath day than to go out on a walk with Jesus. And this is what the disciples were doing. They were spending time with their Lord. Pharisees had a problem with it. Jesus had to remind them that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath, and that the Son of Man, God himself, Jesus, was Lord even of the Sabbath. He's Lord over that. Romans chapter 14, verse 5. One person regards one day above another. Another regards every day alike. Each person must be fully convinced in his own mind. He who observes the day observes it for the Lord. He who eats does so for the Lord, for he gives thanks to God. He who does not eat, for the Lord he does not eat, and gives thanks to God. Which day you choose is really up to you, but if you choose Saturday or Sunday or whatever that your schedule allows, take a day, devote it to the Lord, and spend time with Him. That way you can grow spiritually and engage in spiritual growth and strengthening, and you can spend it apart from all of the other things of the world. It's not time to be legalistic. It's time to enjoy the presence of the Lord and to look at it as a delight and not a burden, which is what the children of Israel were doing. That's why God exiled them. What is forbidden in the fourth commandment? The fourth commandment forbids dishonoring the Lord's day by actions or thoughts that divert the soul from spiritual refreshment, or deprive the body of renewed energy, or distract the mind from its special Sabbath focus on the Lord.